This podcast episode may contain language and depiction of suicide and eating disorders that some survivors or those in recovery may find upsetting. Please consider your triggers and well-being before listening to this episode. Hi, I'm Carra, and I'm here to change the conversations around mental health and eating disorders, bringing real-life stories of survivors, those in recovery, and my personal journey. It is estimated that 1 in 5 adults experience mental health illness. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among people aged 10 to 34. It is estimated that 8 million Americans have an eating disorder, 7 million women and 1 million men. Only 1 in 10 people with an eating disorder actually receive treatment. Eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any mental illness. 1 person dies as a direct result of their eating disorder every 52 minutes, whether through medical complications or by suicide. This podcast will lead the way for having those hard conversations about mental health and eating disorders. This podcast will also focus on the healing properties of being in nature, which for me, completely changed my life. Thank you for joining me today on today's episode of the Journey Podcast. I'm so excited to be here and having these difficult conversations about mental health and eating disorders with you. Today, I will dive into my journey through Reason's eating disorder program with the dietitian that treated me. I was in Reason's virtual eating disorder program, meaning I could be at home, but was in session daily via Zoom. She helped to change my life, and I'm so very happy to have her on today's episode. Raylene Hungate is a registered dietitian that has worked within eating disorder programs. Raylene has been given my complete consent to discuss my treatment and my sessions from when I was in Reason's eating disorder program. Raylene, thank you so much for joining me today and coming on to talk about my care during my time at Reasons and what being a registered dietitian for an eating disorder program is like. I wanted to ask, how are the doggies?
Great, as usual, always interrupting my session, so hopefully they don't interrupt too much today.
Yes, to give a little backstory, every single time that I would have a session with Raylene, her doggies would come and start barking. I secretly think that they knew I was part of their tribe. So let's get started. Raylene, can you explain what a registered dietitian is?
Of course, yeah. I did want to start by thanking you for having me as well. I know I've told you in the past, but it was my privilege being a part of your journey. So a registered dietitian is an expert, if you will, in food and nutrition. We do have at least 4 years of schooling along with an internship and taking a registration exam. I do want to add a little disclaimer that all dietitians are nutritionists, but not all nutritionists are dietitians. So making sure if you are looking for a nutrition expert, you look for the word dietitian because that means that we've gone through the examination and the qualifications.
Got it. So what role does the registered dietitian play within like an eating disorder program?
I think that's a lot different than the role dietitians play in a lot of other areas. I have the privilege of being like an integral part of the care team. I think dietitians' role within the eating disorder world is just very held to a high standard, if you will. And so our role is, yes, knowing about food and nutrition, but guiding an individual to learning about it and finding the journey they want to take, what they want recovery to look like, because everyone's journey is going to look different and everyone's relationship with food is going to be different.
Can you explain some of your background, like why you became a registered dietitian, why you chose to work with people with eating disorders?
Mm-hmm. So I've worked all over the place. I started in clinical work, and then I moved into cardiac rehabilitation. And surprisingly, people are very surprised when I tell them that for about 6 years, I worked in bariatric surgery. And within the realm, I saw so many people either not diagnosed or misdiagnosed and just being pushed down this avenue that wasn't helpful for them mentally, emotionally, physically. So because of my experiences, I was always intrigued by helping in the realm of eating disorders, but I just made a decision that the way nutrition was being presented to all of these people I had treated in the past just wasn't supporting their quality of life. And I knew if I went in the avenue of eating disorders, that I could focus more on the client and truly what they want rather than just pushing nutrition information at someone.
Got it. How long have you been within the eating disorder, like just being a registered dietitian just for eating disorders?
Specifically eating disorders, a little between 4 and 5 years.
4 and 5 years. Okay. And when did you join Reason's eating disorder program?
4 to 5 years ago.
4 to 5 years ago. And I remember you started in residential more than the virtual program.
Yes.
Correct?
I think that was so helpful because in residential, the core team there is the nurse, the dietitian, the therapist. Everyone meets with a psychiatrist as well. But you work hand in hand with a therapist. You get to bounce ideas off of one another and you get to meld your interventions because nutrition's directly related to the therapeutic work. And had I not started in residential, I don't think I'd be the dietitian I am today.
I know that there's a lot to become, to work with somebody that has an eating disorder. Can you explain for our listeners what it takes to be qualified to work as a dietitian for eating disorders?
So, of course, there's the standard of at least the 4 years of schooling and then going on for your internship and your qualifying exam. It's sad for me to admit that eating disorders are not a big part of the curriculum. And so in my internship, I did choose to spend a good amount of time working in their eating disorder program. And so I was lucky that my internship had that opportunity. But as far as how I got to, I guess, the place I am today, that was, like I said, working directly with therapists, a lot of continuing education, which I pride myself that I try to stay up on not only nutrition, but body image aspects that I can bring into my sessions as far as skills, all that jazz. And then I also make sure to do supervision with a certified eating disorder dietitian at least twice a month. And so I'm able to bounce ideas off of, able to check in like, do you have ideas? Because I think that's so important is dietitians are anyone, right? We don't have all the answers. And so as a team, you're so much more capable of helping others when you open your mind to others' ideas, opinions.
Got it. Yeah, I would say, that's one of the things that I recognized during program from just being able to have like an entire team and you guys all talked to each other and you decided a plan for me. It's totally different than, just being on the outside, going to a therapist and dietitian. So it's very interesting that, that the path that you take to have to become a dietitian within the eating disorder program. What do you think is the most important aspect of working with patients who have eating disorders?
There's so many, but I think something I've learned as just a practitioner, I think a lot of dietitians straight out of school are like, I know everything and you should do this. And in reality, everyone's different and you cannot put people in a box. And I think that is the biggest aspect that I try to bring into my care as a dietitian is understanding that when I head into a session, I want to get to know that person and I want to get to know what they think recovery looks like for them and help them on the path toward that.
So I think this is a great place to transition and talk about my time at Reasons. Kind of being on the recovery side now, it's hard for me to exactly remember when I first went in what all happened. Can you, if you remember, what were like my biggest hurdles and what did we really, really work on during my time at the program?
I remember our initial sessions and you very much having hope, but part of you very much feeling like it felt so far off to be in a recovered state. Like, how will I ever get there? And so I think some of your biggest hurdles were learning that you had the strength in a lot of the moments that we set up exposures. Initial exposures that we did, for example, like going to the movie theater and getting gummy candy and feeling like I'm going to be distracted. It's just going to end up in a binging episode. And did that happen initially? Yeah. But as you challenged, which exposures are meant to be done over and over again, you started to gain strength and independence in using your skills and not needing the prompting. I saw you grow so much in the confidence you had in, oh yeah, I'm actually doing these things. It's not my team doing these things for me. I think another like pivotal moment, correct me if I'm wrong, it was like a holiday with your family that you went.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was a similar belief. I think I asked you not to record on recovery record to have like accountability for your meals and snacks. And you were like, what am I going to do if I don't have someone to tell what I'm doing or hold me accountable? And I think that experience had ups and downs as well, but it was also building confidence that you are the one making the next recovery choice.
Can you explain what rescue recovery is for those that don't know what it is?
Oh, rest in recovery, did you say?
No, rescue recovery, what the app does, basically.
Yeah. Okay. So recovery record, it essentially has each patient or client, however you want to term, record all their meals and snacks along with emotions they're having at their meals and snacks, behaviors that might be coming up. So it gives them an avenue to bring more awareness to what they're having for meals and snacks, how consistent they're eating, as well as potential triggers that are coming up, why they're choosing certain foods or why they're engaging in behaviors.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because I still have it downloaded on my phone. I don't use it, but it's still there, just, which is, the dietitian that I'm working with currently, we do a little bit of a different kind of style of, checking in with meals and that kind of stuff. But, it's always still there. It reminds me. But just getting to the fact that you brought up that the more confidence in me actually knowing my behaviors, that, when it's happening, I think that's the biggest thing that after program now that I am noticing is that I am more on top of a behavior. Like if I start doing this behavior, I know that I'm doing it. Then before I was like, I wouldn't really, care to know that I was doing it. But I have so much more awareness from program, which is just amazing in general.
I'd also add, I think there probably was some awareness beforehand, but I think too many people, practitioners, other people struggling have just related behaviors to guilt and shame. And then if I share it, it shows that how much I'm struggling, or potentially it means I'm not strong enough. And having awareness behind your behaviors, being able to acknowledge a behavior happened, but it doesn't define you. Geez Louise, that just shows strength. And I wish more people knew that.
Yeah, exactly. It's, I still surprise myself to this day. It's been a little bit over a year since I've been out of program. And just the fact of learning the tool, I think the tool is just that I learned from program, from you, from a therapist, it's created a whole new kind of perspective for me on my life and how, I kind of relax on the control aspect of it. It's more, I'm letting the universe take over type thing, which is not something I would ever do before. So one of the first things that we did was create a meal plan for me. And I know that Reasons focuses on mindful eating. Can you explain the significance of a meal plan and what mindful eating is?
Yes. So for meal plans, I still want to preface that each client I meet with is a person, which means all meal plans are different. No two people are going to have the same needs. So I think in general, though, the structure of a meal plan is really important. I can't tell you how many clients come to me and they're like, I'm just not a breakfast person. It's how I've always eaten. And so it's us having a conversation around, yes, these are habits and they've come from somewhere, right? And talking about the history behind them and potentially the memories connected. And then talking about the fact that even though we've always done something, doesn't mean we have to continue that. And what do you want out of your meal plan too? So in general, though, I think the structure also builds trust. And a lot of people don't eat breakfast because they're not hungry in the morning because that's what their body's used to, right? Their body's like, well, why am I going to ask you for food at this time if you're never going to give it to me? And so if we build consistency, individuals start to have more consistent hunger, more consistent fullness, and they're also able to reconnect with what hunger and fullness feels like to them. And so the meal plan is a starting place. And without that kind of like consistency structure, you can't really get to mindful or intuitive eating because you're not able to connect. And so once we can build some structure, so I'm sure you remember, we just kept with a meal plan for quite an amount of time.
Yep.
And then we moved into utilizing like a meal tracker so that you could write down and explore like what are the physical things I feel at a meal. Also, what are emotional things that might be impacting the physical that I'm feeling? So the mindfulness piece is truly that reconnection to your body as well as your senses and the experience of eating. And then in like hand in hand and tangled is adding in the intuitive eating principles. And obviously those take learning and then application and practice. I'm not perfect. No one's perfect at intuitive eating. And so I think that's also to keep in mind that it is always an ongoing practice.
Yeah, I know that was a huge hurdle for me, especially because I grew up eating in front of the TV. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we did as a family. So when I got to the point that I needed to eat, at a table or at a desk and not have any, distractions around me, it was a big hurdle because it caused a lot of anxiety. But I think that what you kind of learn is that reconnection with your body. And I know that one of the things that we really worked on was my fullness cues, because I didn't really even know what that felt like. I just, so, I think it's just, I don't know. It's just great. It's, I can't thank you enough for helping me get to where I am today. So, what are the other strategies that you use, like nutrition therapy?
Well, I think this part makes me so excited about virtual work, because in residential, I could be helping individuals in person and we could cook together and we could do all these things. And then in virtual setting, I got to be more creative and I think strategies of having meals with clients, cooking with clients, showing them like the normalcy of variety that I have in my life and the possibility of having that in theirs as well. Other strategies, I think, include incorporating cultures, incorporating what we have coming up, holiday seasons, yes. And really getting, I think, first and foremost, getting to go into a session. And I think I'm a little different than other dietitians in the fact that I kind of just open my session up to clients to just be like, how did this week go? And just let me hear your perspective and then let us bounce ideas off of each other. I think a strategy of working hand in hand with your client is of the utmost importance because no one ever got anywhere by being forced to do anything. Right?
And it won't work if the person's being forced. They have to want to have it. So
right. So I might have in my mind this idea of an intervention I want to do, but I'm sure you remember we'd talk about interventions and I'd let you know an idea of one, but then you'd say, well, what if we could do it this way? I feel like I could approach that first. And rather than being like, no, that's not the right way, to be like, okay, like if that's where you're ready to start, let's take it from there. So I think I guess if I could sum all that up, my overall strategy is to allow the client to be in the driver's seat.
Got it. Yes, I do remember that. I know that you had me write down all the foods that I would like to binge. And we kind of started, I didn't want to start at the hardest one. So, we kind of stuck in at the beginning of some of the things that were a little bit easier to get, to be able to work on and get exposure with. And so I know that's a strategy for sure that works for me. How would you describe your treatment style?
Tough love.
Got it.
And I guess...
But it works. It works.
Also, I think I'm very transparent. I don't try to beat around the bush. If I'm concerned about something, I bring it to the forefront. And I think because of the tough love, the transparency, I'm able to just work with like such a variety of people, whether it's cultures, whether it's a variety of ages. And I think I'm just more of a relaxed dietitian than I ever was in the past, of not being so anxious on like milestones patients need to meet or this or that, but allowing patients to understand that treatment is flexible and it's not linear. Sometimes goals change or evolve. Sometimes we're working on the same goals for weeks on end, and that's okay too, because you're still progressing, even if it's kind of like up and down. So yes, overall, my treatment style would definitely be flexible, transparent, and a bit of tough love.
Got it. What do you think works for me? I know the tough love helped me for sure.
I think helping in some moments, starting interventions with you in session, sometimes doing imagery, and then in moments challenging you to be able to start to do things on your own. I think if you didn't have so many like aha moments of like, oh, I am doing this on my own, you'd still be doing well in your recovery. But I know confidence was something that you really wanted to work on. And I believe that's in part how you started to build your confidence.
And just for people to understand is that in program, registered dietitians not only help with the nutrition side of it, but we actually talk about, it's almost like another therapy session or having another therapist. We do talk about body image and confidence, and like we would do trials of me trying on different clothes in front of the mirror and stuff like that. So can you kind of go into that aspect of being a dietitian?
Yeah. Thank you, Carra, because I think most people are like, yeah, you just know about food. But in reality, we talked about, yes, scenarios that involve food, but how you feel in your body when you're around people, how you feel in your body when you're eating food, how you feel in your body when you're hiking. And I think so many people don't realize how much like values and like attributes, if you will, are connected directly to like, yes, food and your actions around food, as well as body and your actions within your body. So it's always a goal of mine to explore values, explore how you're currently living your life, and if you want that to look different. For you individually, I know you experienced a lot of pain in your body, and we even looked at, okay, does that mean you have to push yourself to be uncomfortable and in pain by going on a hike, or can you be in nature in a different way? And allowing your body to be present and connected to the things you love without hurting it.
Yes. And one thing that my therapist and Raylene talked about to help me kind of reconnect to my body, because having fibromyalgia made me kind of wholly disconnect from my body because I was always angry. So they got me a yoga, basically a trauma yoga mindful instructor that actually continued to work with outside of program, but to help me learn how to, reconnect with my body. So it's the modalities of what they do, what you guys do is just, there's not just one thing. It's like it's a whole team. And it's great. It's just amazing.
You got there before I even did. I took just a couple notes of things I wanted to note, but I think that was a pivotal time for you as well, those yoga sessions, because it gave you time to just solely focus on reconnecting to your body. And I think that was applied to so many different areas.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So where do you think within programs, so I was in program for 4 months, where do you think my transformation kind of happened within the program?
I kind of want to ask you the same thing. I think the halfway point, like you started having more like realization, but then there was like a couple steps back with the pain you were experiencing and having a flare up. And so I think that allowed kind of like, when you see the upward spiral, falling back, but then being able to continue moving forward. And then I think like the last quarter is where it like clicked. And I also think that was like after the family vacation, all of that. And, there was just more of like this realization of, oh, wait, no, I'm doing this. And even though I'm scared to not have that team supporting me there all the time, I have more like hope, faith that like I'm able to do this on my own.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would say the same exact thing. And I know that is one thing that I talk about, in my first episode, is just how there's a couple of times during program that I think one or two that I went on like a weekend getaway with one of my friends. And, I was telling the team that when I get back, it's like I'm a completely different person. And I remember that when I did come back from one of those, you're like, you are like a completely different person because nature, it's my happy place. So it's, just being able to continue to do what I love, but in maybe a not so, let's go 12-mile hikes. Right. That's just being there and being able to, I guess, realize that I still have a space there in nature, and that I can still be there and enjoy it. And so that was always, I think that was a huge realization for me. And just, I think the fact too of going from PHP down to IOP, which was very scary for me. I think that there was this also realization that like, oh, maybe I am getting better. Maybe I am ready to step down, I think fear holds us back for a lot of things. So as we start wrapping up, the work that we did together in program is like the utmost importance. It's the reason I continue to see a dietitian weekly outside of program. I'd like to ask you if there's anything else you would like the listeners to know.
I think I mentioned earlier the idea of strength. And I think even I myself a long time ago thought asking for help meant weakness. And not enough people get help in the eating disorder arena. There are so many people out there struggling. And I guess I can't stress enough how much strength it takes to ask for help. Even if it's letting a loved one know that you might be struggling, letting a friend know, your doctor, so that maybe you can explore avenues. We're here to help, not to judge. I can speak only for myself, but you show up to my session and I'm just going to listen, and I'm going to accept you for you, and we're going to move forward the way you want to. I think treatment can sound scarier than it really is. Mm-hmm. Of course, we're going to challenge you, but we're here to help. You might not know you want it yet, but it's worth giving it a try for a better quality of life.
I would 100% agree with that. I think that going through treatment, I can say, was probably one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life, but going through it changed my life for the better. And if I wouldn't have been placed on my hold, and the psychiatrist kind of, figuring out that something else is going on here, and figuring out that finally somebody said, you've got an eating disorder. I think we need to get some help for you. So I think that it's a life-changing experience. And I hope that along with this podcast, that more people see that it's okay, that I had that same thing. I thought, I was so hush-hush about it my entire life because I saw it as a weakness and I was scared to come out with it. But then now that it is out there, I have the strength and I want to help other people to realize what a life-changing experience that it can be. And just knowing that, when you go in there, your team is, they have your back. Yes. Through everything, literally through everything. So, Raylene, I just want to thank you so much for coming on today's episode and talking about my personal treatment and what it's like being an eating disorder dietitian. I also want to thank you for helping me to achieve recovery and helping to change my life. I do not know where I would be without the Reasons Eating Disorder program, or you, or Jen, or everybody else within the program. It's been a incredible journey, a journey that I'm obviously continuing to this day. And I hope to help other people get that same life-changing experience. So I'm so happy you came on today.
Well, thank you for having me. But also, when you emailed, so proud of just your recovery journey, right? But also this was something you had talked to me about before discharging. And I just knew your story could help so many. And now my hope is just the same, that it does and that it opens the door to conversation for many.
The Journey podcast is brought to you by Dr. April's Hollywood Mobile Vet, Craft 9 Hair Design, and a list of community backers, which you will see in the show notes. This podcast is produced and edited by Mahia TV and can be found on all major podcast platforms. You can support this podcast by liking this episode and subscribing to it. You can also support me by rating this podcast and following me on social media at The Journey Podcast CY. Also, join me every week for a hike around the Los Angeles area. For more information on this episode, visit www.thejourneypodcastcy.com. Thank you for listening and supporting The Journey Podcast.